Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out Live. We are live with Jack Lord and Mitch Lucas, and we're going to talk about WrestleMania. WrestleMania is coming up this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I understand they had to tape it in advance, and it will be played on Saturday and Sunday. But with that being WrestleMania, the week before WrestleMania, I thought we needed to talk about some of the great moments, some of the matches. It don't even really have to be matches, because the matches could have been horrible, but there might have been a moment in that match that someone liked. And I want to start this off because a lot of people didn't like this guy, and especially in the wrestling business. And I can tell a story about David Sammartino. People, for whatever reason, wrestlers did not like him. Now, I don't know what he did to people that rubbed him the wrong way, but they didn't like him. But on WrestleMania, on the first WrestleMania, him and David Sammartino, Bruno Sammartino, went against Valiant and Beefcake. Do y'all remember this match?
I do, but mainly because I rewatched the first two WrestleManias this week.
I mean, that was a good match.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I couldn't, but for some reason, Les Thornton beat him up one time on Georgia Championship Wrestling Television so bad that I don't even think he wanted to show up again after that. I mean, he beat him pretty bad, and it was on TV. Somewhere there's a video of that on TV where he busts his nose and breaks his nose on television. Now, what he did, I don't know, but that was a good match.
Yeah, I'm one of those few guys that actually like David. I worked several shows with him. And he was always nice to me, but now he was standoffish to a lot of the guys. And I think because, I'm kind of laid back, kind of quiet too, in the locker room, believe that or not. And we just, we got along well. But I was there. He was working an angle with Joel Deaton. And man, what some matches they had. And they had a chop fest one night, and I couldn't eat hamburger for a month after looking at their chest. It was horrible. But
he was a good wrestler, and I was surprised when I went back and watched that match because I've watched up to WrestleMania 6, and I thought, man, what a match they had. Jack, what's a match that you've seen on WrestleMania that you said, hey, this was a great moment or a match?
Well, I'm gonna tell you the greatest WrestleMania match in my memory, which is limited, was The Rock and Hulk Hogan.
Oh yeah.
The way that the crowd reacted, they didn't go who Vince was wanting them to go for. The crowd turned one face and one heel. But the greatest thing about that was how quickly those two adapted to what was going on, and they embraced everything. And just went with it. I had chills watching that. And I've watched the replay several times, and those chills don't stop. I mean, it's just, that was professional wrestling to me. Maybe the last that you could call pro wrestling up there, but they had that crowd, everything that we ever worked for in that ring, they had in that match.
Yeah, and both of them recently on their Twitter accounts, they have both recently talked about that match. Hulk Hogan was saying they sent him to Tampa and they wanted him to go through the whole match. And he said, I can't do that. He said, I'll get out there and I'll hurt myself before the match happens. He said, now we can talk over the match. But he said, I'm not going out there and taking any flips over the top rope or anything like that. He said, because if I hurt myself, then there's no need to even talk about this. So, and I think The Rock has talked about it as well on his Twitter. So if anybody got the Twitter accounts for Hulk Hogan, and I don't have them, I just heard about the interviews. And I think you might be able to pick at. I think Hulk Hogan, does he have a Facebook page?
Yeah.
It might be on his Facebook page. So if you go to that, he talks about that in length. It's about 20 minutes. He talks about that match. Mitch, what match have you?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I agree with you, and I don't want to all flame out in the first few minutes, but there are moments and there are matches for me. And I'll give you an example so that I don't want to burn up all my good stuff right off. But to me, Hogan and Andre at WrestleMania 3 was a moment. And it was an okay match, but it was a spectacle. It was one of those, you remember where you were when this was going on. Of course, I think I mentioned it and stole a little bit of my own thunder last week when I said that Savage and Steamboat actually wrestled on the undercard for the Intercontinental title. And that was kind of the match forever that everybody said, this is the best one. As far as lately, and I'll go ahead and talk about this now because I know we're probably going to have readers and I'm sure we'll get to it. But think about how many, and I know, a lot of people don't like him probably personally, but think about how many matches over the last 20 years that Shawn Michaels has been involved with at WrestleMania that were considered great matches. I guess probably my personal favorite was either Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon Scott Hall at WrestleMania 10, the ladder match, which redefined completely the gimmick match. That was super, super good. And also, it's not been recently in the last couple years, but in 2009 and 10, his back-to-back WrestleManias against Mark Calloway, The Undertaker. Just some off-the-charts, really good matches. I think maybe we probably knew in that retirement match that it would be Michaels that would be losing and retiring. But just a couple of matches that, somebody joked that, and I guess that kind of diminishes Scott Hall a little bit. I don't know that I think this way, but I remember reading after that match, the ladder match, that Shawn Michaels just had a match with a ladder for 45 minutes. But, it was a great match, and Scott Hall did his part, without it takes two to tango. And so many good matches over the years have involved Shawn Michaels. I guess that's why a lot of the guys in the locker room call him Mr. WrestleMania.
Shawn, the only thing that ever hurt him was his attitude. I mean, you would watch his match. I can remember, and I don't know, he did win the WWF championship. He did win it on a WrestleMania, correct?
He won it on WrestleMania 12. For his first win was in that Iron Man match against Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12, 2 years after that one with Ramon. Okay,
that was when Jose Lothario was at
right.
Corner, and I can remember watching that match and thinking, I don't know if they'll be able to handle that 60 minutes and be able to keep
a long time.
Going. But man, they kept that match interesting. But then right at the end, I was psyched up and I loved the match, and I seen Shawn Michaels tell Jose to get out of the ring, and I'm thinking, and Jose just, if you watch the end of the match, Jose just puts his hands up and says, "Okay, if you want me to leave." I thought that was pretty sad. My hope. Before he passed on, I hope Shawn Michaels did apologize to Jose for telling him to get out of the ring, which if it wasn't for Jose, he would have never been in that ring.
Yeah, from my understanding, he did. John has spent a lot of time since he got saved going back and apologizing to a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, now, he never apologized to us, so I don't know. Maybe he needs to make a telephone.
Into you either, so.
Maybe he needs to make a telephone call to us because and I'll have to tell that story in the Continental.
We need to. I would like to hear that too. I've heard buzz over the years, and I even heard the story from kind of the Armstrong family side. So I'd love to hear that along the way somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good story, and I've heard Marty Jannetty talk about that story, and I've heard Shawn Michaels. I think he has it in his book.
He does,
and I've heard Robert Fuller tell the story, and there's a mix of truthfulness in all that story, but I can tell you the story because the office personnel that took the jacket was me. So I can tell that whole story exactly what happened, and I think I can even see the girl still to this day and them crying over that. But we will share that story somewhere down the line. Another match that I saw on WrestleMania 2, and I posted about it the other day, was the Funks with Jimmy Hart against Tito Santana and the Junkyard Dog. Now, that match was a tremendous match. Have you seen that match, Jack?
Been a while, but I do know what you're talking about.
I mean, that match, I mean, to me, WrestleMania 2 was not the greatest WrestleMania. I think
agree.
all those little switches from one town to the next, I think
it was distracting.
It just killed that crowd where they didn't really react to something. But boy, the Funks, when they get out there, they and when I watched Tito Santana, this man was really a great wrestler that never really got the credit he deserved, because he was spectacular in the ring and those every match. I think he may be one of the, except for the Undertaker, I believe he could be underneath him as being on WrestleMania as many times as he was on it, because I think he was on there many, many years. I know for the first 6 years he was on it. Mm-hmm. But the great match. Jack, what's another one of your matches?
WrestleMania 6, I believe it was, Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. Two baby faces. Vince had long had that baby faces can't face baby face stipulation. But they went into that, and both of those guys, I'm never a fan of the Ultimate Warrior's work, but that was a heck of a match. And if that don't show you that Hulk Hogan really could work, he carried him for that whole match. And I mean, it stands the test of time. It was good. It was really good. And it meant something. That's the important thing, is in the scheme of things, it really told a great story.
Because boy, Warrior was not that good at all. I went back and watched some of his stuff. Man, he's pretty sad when it went to the ring, and people say stuff about Hulk Hogan, but when you watch his matches, it was solid. Everything he did looked good. Nothing looked bad that he did, because he didn't do things. If it's going to look bad, he didn't do it. That's what made a great professional wrestler. There's a couple of people have chimed in. Let me get these people. Overlooked, very little talked about, was Wendy Richter versus Lalia Kai for WrestleMania 1. The ladies brought national attention to women's wrestling, which was basically up to that point was just to view as a side attraction. I agree with that. I think Wendy Richter was the first real star wrestler. Now, Fabulous Moolah was, but she was never featured like Wendy Richter was within a show. She would go there, she'd do her match, and she would leave. Yeah. Let's see. Great interview with Fuller last week. Well, thank you so much. I thought that was a good, and we will be doing more interviews with Ron Fuller in the next few weeks. The Funk match was probably the best of Mania 2. I agree with that. Yep. Jay Smith, I love Terry Funk in the WWF. Hogan was a shopping cart against Warrior. Hogan was a shopping cart. What's that mean? I'm sorry, I'm lost on that.
Well, what do you remember from that match? Let me tell you what I remember. It wasn't, and I mean, I will say this. I know that he turned his life around the last couple of years before he passed away. Thank goodness. And he was not the most endeared in the locker room. I know that from being acquainted with people who have told me so. But what I remember, other than the spectacle and the lead up to the Hogan Warrior match, was what happened after, when the crowd got completely, totally silent and stunned when Hogan insisted on bringing the belt up into the ring. Do you remember what he did? I watched this match this week too. I remembered it anyway, but I wanted to watch his movements. And he gets to the top of the steps and he pauses and he kind of rests the belt or his arm on his hip. And at that point, the game was on. Nobody knew what Hogan was going to do. Was he going to, give it to him, be a good sport? Was he going to throw it down and basically say, here then? Was he going to, it was at that point, there's not internet dirt sheets all over the place for everybody to read to know what's going to happen. And I remember I think I was 21 when that match happened. And I remember there watching that with several people thinking, you know what? Hulk Hogan just won the day in that 2 minutes after the match. Because that's what everybody was talking about after, was what he did and his ride back to the locker room. And Ultimate Warrior, what a lot of people remember too. If you remember, the NWA put their belt on Sting right after that too. So you had Sting and the Ultimate Warrior were both leaders of the company right around that same time. But let me just say this. We're talking about most iconic, most this, most that, best matches. Let me throw out what I think is the most underrated match in WrestleMania history, and I think both of you are going to remember it. But it was another one of those where the ring psychology was just off the charts. Check out WrestleMania 8. And WrestleMania 8 is not thought of as one of the great WrestleManias, but it's got two fantastic matches on it. One of them everybody remembers, which was Ric Flair defending the world title against Randy Savage, which, you know, turned into a really good match, probably Ric Flair's best WrestleMania match. But the other one on that card was Roddy Piper defending the Intercontinental title against upstart Bret Hart, who was just kind of coming to his own as a singles wrestler. And he had, you know, did the feud with Kurt Hennig with Mr. Perfect, their Mr. Perfect. We may have the real Mr. Perfect here next week or this week, later in the week. But the most underrated match I think I've ever seen on a WrestleMania was Piper and Hart. They just a fantastic match and a great way to a great intermission match, I guess I would say, right in the first half of the show.
You know, I think that Roddy Piper never got credit that he deserved as well as you know, because, you know, people said, you know, especially if you hear Ole Anderson talk about him, that he didn't have, but you know, Piper, everything he did always looked good. He never threw a punch that didn't look good. He never did. And those guys, what made them so great was they didn't do it if they couldn't do it. That's what made them so good. If a guy couldn't do a drop kick, which, you know, sometimes Michael Hayes, somebody needed to tell him he couldn't do a drop kick because his drop kicks were horrible. But, you know, the one thing I always used to tell Michael, don't do a drop kick tonight in Chattanooga. You know, we don't want you to break the guy's knees. But we were really mean to Michael Hayes as kids. I don't know why he even talked to us to this day. But, you know, the thing about it is those guys were so good. You know, and I watched a WrestleMania 4 match yesterday with Ricky Steamboat and Greg Valentine. Man, this match gets overlooked because this match was great. And I think it takes, people don't give Greg Valentine the credit he deserves. Greg Valentine had good matches. If you go and look at these WrestleManias, these first couple of WrestleManias, the first 6, he has some great matches on those cards because he knows the psychology, because he goes back. Johnny Valentine was one of the greatest persons that he had that psychology down, and I think Greg Valentine did. So I think I would almost put this Greg Valentine match and Steamboat. It was a shorter match, but I would say it was as good as Savage's and Steamboat's match.
Yeah,
it was a good match.
Yeah,
I didn't want all of them to talk at once.
Yeah. Touching on the Steamboat Savage match again real quick. I had Ricky on the show about a year and a half ago, and we sat down and talked a little bit about that. And he said he was completely out of his element with that because he had never sat down and called a match move by move before that one. Wow. And how Randy had flown him down several weekends in a row, so and he had a ring set up in his backyard, and he said we would go through it for hours, and then he said I think we'd get it down, and then he'd say, all right, be back next weekend, let's do it again. Oh, man. And he said, you know, he said it was an adjustment for him, but he said Randy was right. You know, he said that got him out of that comfort zone of just working the crowd, that, or, you know, whatever, the way he had always done it. And he understood sometimes you do have to call some stuff like that. He said, now, I never like calling to that detail again, but he said there was a lot of work went in on that. And I tell guys all the time, you know, that match was not a draw. That's not why people watch that WrestleMania. Yeah. You just got that's like the greatest dessert in the world after the best meal you've ever had. You know, you didn't expect it. By golly, you appreciated it.
You know, WrestleMania 3 was the turning point for all the territories. That was the match, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, that took the territories, because WWF would come to Alabama, to Tennessee, and Continental would beat them every time. They never beat them. Now, There was one exception to that rule: if Hulk Hogan was on the card. Now, if he was on the card, usually it would do well, but they very rarely would bring Hogan to there until after WrestleMania. For some reason, they started bringing them into Alabama, and they would beat, because that was a turning point. After that, every wrestling territory was being, they had the magnifying glass out to see what kind of product that they were producing compared to what WWF was producing. And let's be honest, their product was here while everybody else's was way down here. And that's even goes for Jim Crockett. They had the greatest product out there. I'll tell you another match that I saw on WrestleMania 3 that I thought was good. It was the Hart Foundation with Danny Davis against the Bulldogs and Tito Santana. Another match that Tito Santana was in. That match at WrestleMania 3, I don't think it gets enough recognition, but that was a great match.
That whole show was good. I mean, I guess if you just everybody, this is one thing, we talk about best match and best moment and whatnot. I think a lot of people, they want to get in, and I'm talking about the old internet wrestling community, as they call it. They want to start listing the best WrestleManias ever. Like, I know 17 gets thrown around a lot. That's the one where Austin and Rock are at the end, and they ended the Mr. McMahon Austin angle by turning Austin heel, which I think a lot of people were kind of soured on that. Match was great. I rewatched that match today. Match was great, but that's also the WrestleMania that had the triple threat tag team match with the Hardys and Edge and Christian and the Dudleys. So WrestleMania 17 gets thrown out a lot as the best WrestleMania. WrestleMania 3, which I guess for my money, since that was to me forever the iconic moments of Savage and Steamboat and Hogan and Andre, I think 3 was the best. Let me throw out another recent one though. And I really, sometimes I don't get mad at me, but some of their current product just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Because I think that they're putting the company over as more of the star than the actual guys. But one in the last few years that was really good was WrestleMania 24. That was the one in Orlando that had Flair and Shawn Michaels in Flair's build last match or retirement match. If he lost, he had to retire. And it was also an Edge Undertaker main event, I think, at the end of the night for the world title. But I thought that WrestleMania was really good. I thought Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair handled that. Ric Flair didn't look like 1985 Ric Flair defending the title against Bob Armstrong in Boutwell Auditorium, but he did put on a very credible show with probably a little bit past his prime Shawn Michaels. But still, just a great match. I guess for my money, though, WrestleMania 3, you've mentioned several, Brent, from that. That might be the one I think of as the best WrestleMania ever. It would be hard. It's hard to top it.
I agree with that.
I think I can remember that one because we just knew. I mean, being in the territorial system at the time, and we just knew that this was a turning point that we were never coming back from, and unless there was a lot of money being spent to make your production go much higher, you knew that that was going to be the end for the territories. You just knew it, because there's no way you could compete with that. I mean, you're running in a place that's got 3,000 people, and they're selling a 90,000 seat building out. So you knew something was going to happen. So I think I can remember that one more than I can do it. And I'll be honest, I've not really watched any of the WrestleManias that's been going on now. I've not watched. I watched a couple of the matches, but I've not watched a lot of them. So is there anything, Jack? I know you watched WrestleMania throughout. Is there a match that just happened in the last 5 years that just people just would say this is great?
Well, WrestleMania 30 just comes right under the radar there.
Yeah.
But this was at the time where WWE was consistently dropping the ball with Daniel Bryan. I mean, he was having tremendous responses from the crowd, and Vince just could not see pushing a guy his size, as hard as he needed to be pushed. And the fans was not going to take no for an answer. I don't care if they went out there and jobbed him to a broom. They were still going to cheer for him.
Yeah.
And the match he had with Triple H showed that the fans knew who a real babyface was. And Triple H went out there, man, and made him look like the superstar he was.
Yeah, made him like $1 million.
You know, the cap on that at the end of the night when he came back and won the championship was great. I mean, they went ballistic. But that lead-up match, the first match of the card, I just watched it the other day. That, man, that was wrestling right there.
It was good.
I mean, that was good stuff.
I'll have to see that. I'm gonna watch some more of them later on this week.
That's also the night where we got the biggest surprise maybe ever in WrestleMania. That's the night where Brock Lesnar beat The Undertaker and ended the streak.
Yes.
So that WrestleMania 30, which was in New Orleans, was it was good. And now that's been, 6 years ago. But boy, yeah, that Bryan Triple H match, I had that on my list. That's good, Jack.
Well, to me, I have loved everything that Brock Lesnar has done since he's been there. And I know I'm in the minority on that, but to me, the guy is legitimate and they have treated him that way. And, you know, I hear people complain all the time, you know, well, he's just beating people up. Well, you know, the truth is he can't.
Yeah.
You know, there's not very many people, unless Brock want to let you beat him, you're not going to beat him. And I also heard the story from him, an interview, a rare one he did, where he said he didn't want to beat the Undertaker. You know, they had to talk him into that. He didn't want to. He didn't want to be the one. It wasn't about business. It was about respect. You know, he just didn't think he had earned that. And that says something right there for you, top guy.
You know, though, and I don't know that they should have stopped the streak. I like the streak of the Undertaker.
I did too. I think at the time they were looking at Undertaker probably didn't have but a few more years left at best. So they were trying to capitalize off that and give Brock an even bigger rub. And then as it turns out, you know, Taker's still with us, which I'm glad. You know, I still like to see him because they're very conservative with how many times they put him out there. So, you know, you don't see his age as much as you can reminisce and he can still do some of that stuff, but you don't see him all the time. And I like that.
The other day they did I think it was Raw or SmackDown. I'm not for sure which one it was, but he came out there and they did the autograph. I think it was SmackDown, and they did the thing on television where they're going to do the contract signing, and AJ Styles sent them out there. And here comes the two guys. I don't even know who they are, but whatever two guys that was. And they came out and they did the thing. And I think Undertaker would like for his little beanie thing he had on, the little hat thing, I think he'd like for that to stay on, but it came right off the first time he did something. And you could almost see in his eyes, oh, crap. You know, because he would like for his thing, because he is losing his hair, I've noticed, pretty tremendous. But he's had some health issues though, hasn't he, throughout the last few years?
Yeah, I mean he deals with a ton of injuries just the way all of us do, you know, over time. But his wife, you got to give her credit. She really pushes him to take care of himself. He's probably in the best shape he's been in a long time.
Yeah, he looks in good shape.
Yeah, and you know, I think he's a big user of that DDP yoga, which I think is awesome. And I need to get off my fat butt and do it myself. But
me too.
But you know, he's still going. He's still going.
Bundy and Hogan in the Blue Steel was always a memory I have. Hogan's broken ribs. It was a good match. It was a good match. I don't think it was one of Hogan's greatest matches, but it was a good match. Bryan explained that he carried Warrior and brought everything with him. Now I understand what you're saying about the shopping cart. I'm glad you explained that, because I was lost. And if he wouldn't explain it, I've been worrying about that all night. What was he talking about? Jay Smith said, I was in tears as a kid when Bundy broke Hogan's ribs. That tore me up. The Battle Royal on Mania 2 was a good one with all the football players. I'll be honest with you, I frontwards through that match. I don't think I watched it. I don't even know if I remember watching it during that, but I did frontwards through it. But is it Have y'all watched it? Was it good?
Pretty sure that's the one Andre won.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was good for what it was. I'm glad they only did it one time. I'll just leave it at that.
Valentine is a legend. Him and his dad. The storyline is what made Savage and Steamboat. I agree. They did all the stuff off with the bell, and they put all that stuff in that match. The psychology of that match. If anyone is a wrestler and you want to see psychology in a match, and next Tuesday, me and Jack, we're going to do a one-on-one, and we're going to talk about psychology in wrestling, where it came from, why you do it, and we're just going to have a conversation together, just like we would when we were on the phone about wrestling. Because sometimes me and Jack can be on the phone for about 2 hours talking wrestling. Now I promise you, we won't be on here 2 hours, but we'll talk about wrestling. But we talk about psychology. We talk about all those stuff. And next Tuesday, we're going to do that. We're going to talk about psychology, territories, the WWF, what was thought about in the territory system and why the territories went out of business. It wasn't all Vince McMahon's fault. And me and Jack will talk about that next week. WrestleMania 3 was stacked, and Jack top to the bottom. That is true. And let's see. Yes, Andre in his yellow tights. Was that
That's in the Battle Royal?
But I noticed. I also saw. What's the guy? There was another guy in that Battle Royal that had yellow tights on, and I can't remember the guy's name right now, but he's a big old guy that he was one of the skyscrapers, I think. Danny Spivey, is that his name?
Danny Spivey.
He actually, I can see why they got rid of him, because he looked just like Hulk Hogan, basically. So I don't really blame him for getting rid of him. Jack, what's another match or a great moment?
More recent again, WrestleMania 34, Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey versus Triple H and Stephanie. I thought that was just a very well told match. They didn't go over the top. They didn't do anything wild, but they introduced Ronda in a way that made her look like a legitimate threat. And subsequently, what they did to her, with her, I've been a fan of that too. I think she brought the same air to the business that Brock has of being real. And, we miss that a lot. We used to have it everywhere, but it's hard to find anymore. But I'm a big Rousey fan. I love what all she does. I love the way she went with that heel turn that came. I know they were trying to push her hard as a baby face, but buddy, when that crowd reacted in a heel way to her, she ate it up. She stuffed it right down everybody's throat too. I love that.
Now, has Trish Stratus ever had a great WrestleMania moment? Has her matches been decent on WrestleMania?
Her work has always been good. I guess the one that stands out the most is probably WrestleMania 19, where she was in the title match against Victoria. That was, I think, the WrestleMania in Seattle, if I remember correctly. That's the same one that had Hogan and McMahon, Michaels and Chris Jericho. It was what I guess WrestleMania 19 will go down for being famous for, though, is it was the last appearance on WrestleMania in a wrestler's role for Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was his last match against The Rock. Earlier, I kind of avoided your question when you asked me what did I think the greatest WrestleMania match of all time is, or what was my favorite. I guess that I would have said Savage and Steamboat, but let me throw another one at you. And Brent, I guess you've seen this. I know Jack's seen it. I feel like Jack's seen it. And you may have seen it, but it was Bret Hart and Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13. Where basically the crowd did the double turn. They completed Bret Hart's turn heel, and they turned Austin face, good guy, in the same night. That's, of course, the one where Austin's got the blood streaming down his face, and he's in the sharpshooter scorpion leg lock, and he doesn't. Austin never gives up. He passes out, which is something that Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair had done before that back in the 80s. But anyway, just right after that, that hit the tracks. That sent they call it the Attitude Era. that kind of sent it down the road with Hart going one direction with a new heel Hart Foundation and Steve Austin going in the other as probably the biggest babyface in the history of the business other than Hulk Hogan. Maybe you might could say Hogan, but Austin would be, I guess, right there with him.
Yeah, I think so. I know people have said stuff about they'll say stuff about Hogan. Oh, he couldn't wrestle. Man, if you have never been in an arena that Hulk Hogan made an appearance at, you had missed something.
Yeah.
I mean, I never, I told this story one time, a long time ago. Tatanka was in Birmingham, and Pat Patterson brought him out, and we were standing like right next to him, and he brought Tatanka out, and Hulk Hogan was going out, and he was going against the Big Boss Man at the time. And he said, now watch this, kid. This is what Pat Patterson said. Watch this, kid. And Hogan comes out, and that place explodes. I mean, it explodes from the time he comes out until the time he leaves. The place is standing. He looks over at Tatanka and goes, now that's a star. So evidently they must have been having some problems with Tatanka, thinking he was a star. But Hogan was a star, and Steve Austin was, and The Rock. All three of them had equal reactions when they would come out. So I think you could put those three guys kind of equally. Hogan probably had a longer span to draw money as Hollywood Hogan and on through, because I don't think Steve Austin had a long, what was it, about 6 years?
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
Yeah.
It was like 97 to 2002. And that WrestleMania in 2002 was his last. He's done several things since then. They did the sheriff gimmick. They did the commissioner gimmick. They've brought him back 3 or 4 times when he's been a part of contract signings. But as far as an active wrestler, that was his last rodeo, as they say.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good. You go.
He it was also very smart about his image too, because he started pulling back from just doing random appearances. So even today, when he does the 1 or 2 things a year, it means something.
Right.
And when he walks through, when that glass breaks and he walks through, those people are still as excited to see him now as they were when he first hit it big. He knows how to keep being over.
Evidently when he was on Raw like a couple of weeks ago, he evidently kicked the guy really hard in
he did.
Actually in the nether regions there, and I think he actually hurt his foot. I think he actually had to go get his foot looked after he did it.
I felt bad for that announcer until I was watching the show last night, and the guy cussed on camera, and then I thought, I wish he'd kicked you harder. But
well, now did they tell him to cuss, or did he do it on his own?
He did. I'm sure they told him to do it, because in Paul Heyman's closing monologue thing, whatever,
he did too.
He did too, and
I noticed
it really disappointed me. And I got a little flack for complaining about it on Facebook, but I love the guys, the men and women up there, the talents. I ain't got no problem with them, but that adult direction of the company, I think that could be a whole show. I won't get off on that. I just think it'd make a huge mistake.
Hey, we'll talk about that next week, and we'll talk about profanity in professional wrestling, and really is it necessary? I don't think it's necessary. I think it's about the storyline. I think it's about getting the wrestler over. I don't think it's about having to use 4 little words or any of that stuff to draw money.
Yeah, that's why I think that for my money, and this I guess will be a good wrap up, and we've got 20 more minutes. But for my money, I know a lot of people don't like it. They get mad when I say this. As big as Stone Cold Steve Austin was, as big as Randy Savage was, as big as The Rock was, for my money, the star was Hulk Hogan. And everybody else, I mean, Austin almost got there. A lot of people disagree with me on this. But to me, had it not been for Hogan, we're talking about WrestleMania. If that had not worked out, and I don't know how truthful he's being on this, but according to everything we read, everything that's out there, Vince McMahon had everything riding on the first couple of WrestleManias.
Yeah.
If that had not worked out, they might have not been in business in 1997 for Steve Austin to go roughshod all over everybody. To me, if you're doing and this is another show for another time, but if you're doing a Mount Rushmore of wrestling, one of them, like it or not, has got to be Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. Yeah, because how many WrestleManias was he on? Does anybody know?
He main evented the first 7.
Okay.
Then he was back in that weird deal in WrestleMania 9 where, Bret Hart loses the title to Yokozuna and they throw a match together and Yokozuna drops the belt right to Hulk Hogan. So he main evented the first 7. I guess you'd say main evented the first 8. He made an appearance at 9. And then you got to go all the way to the match that Jack brought up, which was WrestleMania 18. And that was the real, I know it didn't go on last, but Hogan and The Rock, that WrestleMania in Toronto, that was the main event of the night. I mean, there's no question that there were 5 or 6 matches after it, but it was the clear main event.
Oh, they put that match. I've seen the match, but I don't remember what happened yesterday.
Oh, there were 3 or 4 at least after that.
Oh man.
How could nothing could follow that?
Right. I wouldn't think nothing could follow that match. Another match that I saw on WrestleMania 6 that I thought was good was Mr. Perfect and Brutus Beefcake. That was a great match, and Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, was a spectacular wrestler. I mean, the bumps he would take was just, it probably shortened his career a little bit, all them bumps he took, because he took some that maybe he shouldn't have took. Because man, he'd take some crazy bumps, but he was very believable, and what a ring technician he was. Anybody else have any? Jack, you got another match there?
Yeah, I got one more. WrestleMania 10, Bret versus Owen.
Oh yes.
I had never been a fan of brother versus brother or family versus family type angles before. I guess because I came from such a close-knit family, it was hard for me to, really grasp that kind of dynamic. But, man, those guys had one heck of a match out there.
Yes.
And that ending with Owen going over really shocked me. I didn't expect that at all. And, hell, I'd been in the business for a while at that point. So it was hard to pull it over on me. But they did in that match. It's a match that stands the test of time.
Yeah, I agree. That match was good. I just watched that match, and I'm thinking that would be very hard for anybody to. But you think about the 2 brothers, the stuff that they could talk about, and just the matches they probably had growing up as kids in the dungeon of Stu Hart, which I don't think they got beat up as bad as some of the other wrestlers. I'll tell you another match that I want to talk about, and that's Randy Savage, Sensational Sherry against Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire with Elizabeth. Say whatever you want to about Dusty Rhodes. He was over in the WWF. No matter what, the polka dots and all what everybody said about it, if Vince McMahon was trying to make fun of Dusty, it didn't matter. Dusty was going to get over because Dusty knew how to get over. But that match, have y'all seen that match?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Dusty, he rose above the polka dots.
Yes, he did. That was very good. All right, guys, I think we'll go ahead and finish it up because we could talk WrestleMania. 35 years of WrestleMania. The one coming up do you believe coming up Saturday, are they going to switch the belt from Brock Lesnar to Drew McIntyre?
I hope they do. I think it's time to build some new talent.
I like Drew. I think he's a really good wrestler. I don't know if I was Drew though. Personally, I would think I'd want to wait till there's a crowd, so you don't have crickets hitting.
I don't blame WWE for what they're doing. In fact, I would give them a pat on the back because at least they're out there trying to continue and give us entertainment and stay relevant with what's going on. The deals that they've made about showing on ESPN and FS1 and all this other stuff. I mean, they're giving us stuff that the casual fan doesn't normally get. So I think it's a good business deal on their end, to keep them in the public eye. And like I say, I appreciate, and I know, it's got to be hard for the guys to go out there and work with no crowd. I mean, I've worked in some small venues before, with just a few people, and that was hard. And to have nobody there but millions watching,
Gotta be hard.
that's got to be tough. But they're getting paid good too, so I don't feel sorry for them.
Yeah, but boy, I tell you what, I've read on the online about how many have gotten sick from this coronavirus. So that's not good. But I've enjoyed when I have watched it. I've enjoyed with no crowd. I thought they all worked hard. I think they all was I don't watch All Elite Wrestling. I don't watch it, but I do see little pieces of it. I do watch WWE when I can. I don't actually have cable, but I watch it on Hulu. So, but I always watch it the next night. But I thought they've all done pretty good. I think SmackDown and Raw. I think both of them are great shows. I can't speak on AEW. I don't know All Elite Wrestling. I can't speak on their product, but I have seen the Matt Hardy stuff, and I've seen some of the stuff, and I think they're moving. I did see that they're moving toward more established guys and maybe getting rid of all the littler, smaller guys, which I think they got one little bitty guy that everybody has a problem with. I don't know his name.
Probably Darby Allin.
Is his name Stunt? Is there a guy named Stunt on the show?
There's a guy named Marco Stunt, and he's about 5 foot. He literally, I think he's a little person. And I'm not making fun. I think he's actually a little person.
He
is with a group called it's with Luchasaurus, and you remember Luke Perry, the actor who passed away. His son is actually Jungle Boy. That's Luke Perry's son. So Stunt comes out in a 6-man situation with a guy named Luchasaurus. Think Lord Humongous with a green mask on. He's a big, huge guy, about 6'7".
Is he the one from Big Brother that was on Big Brother?
I don't know that. I do know that Luke Perry's kid is with him. Marco Stunt is extremely small. And there are some in the internet, and I understand it. I mean, you really have to suspend your belief to see him taking on some of the people that he's taking on.
Okay, I've never seen it. I know I listened to Jim Cornette's podcast. Okay, I frommaged through a lot of his podcast to get the point, because there's like 3 hours or something like that. So you have to frommage past it, and you're hoping they would eventually have a beeping thing on there. But if you did, you wouldn't be able to hear nothing but beep, 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 beep all the way through it. I don't know why he can't speak without using profanity over and over and over again. Man, he's more intelligent than that, and I don't understand why he has to do that. But everything I have to say this about Cornette. Usually I agree with what he's talking about in wrestling. I just don't agree with the other things that he says or the way that he puts it. I think he could be probably a little bit more elegant and not so mean-spirited when he talks about the people, because everybody's trying. And no matter what they want to talk about, and we're getting off subject here about WrestleMania, but it doesn't matter what they're talking about. Wrestling has always had wrestlers that wasn't any good. That was happening in the 70s. That was happening in the 80s.
Yes.
And there's always been stupid stuff in wrestling. I mean, we even did it in 1989 in Continental. I mean, we had a funeral for a Continental Cat. Come on now.
I was the Continental Cat a few times, remember?
Yeah. So I mean, come on now. It's always been done. I mean, Jimmy Cornette had his face put in a cake 3 times. He wants to talk about them exposing the business. I don't know how much can you expose the business if you did it in Georgia and then you turned around and did Mid-South, and then let's just go on TBS and do it again. And if you didn't smarten up everybody to Louisiana, they say, well, Louisiana didn't draw. Well, I don't know. Maybe you smartened everybody up there in Louisiana, and they found out that wrestling was a word because you did the same exact angle on TBS. That's the kind of stuff. Everybody tries. Everybody's working hard, no matter if it's from the independent level. Doesn't matter if it's All Elite Wrestling, WWE. They're all trying as hard as they can. Ring of Honor. There's a bunch of wrestling out there for people to watch today. So there's enough that they can they can look and see what's going on. Anybody else, before we leave, anybody else have any more comments?
I want to say this. I'm going to make a prediction. The match that everybody's going to be talking about Monday. Now, I don't know. This is the first time they've done WrestleMania over 2 nights. But the match that, and it'll be probably awkward, but the match that I think everybody's going to be talking about next week is going to be Edge and Randy Orton in the last man standing match. That's the match to me that's had the best build. We're not getting, I'm not going to do any spoilers here, but we're not getting Roman Reigns and Roman Reigns, because of the coronavirus and his leukemia situation, he pulled out of the match. But we are getting Edge and Randy Orton. That match has had some really good build. To me, that's going to be the one that everybody's going to go, wow, that WrestleMania was during coronavirus, but at least it did have Edge and Randy Orton. We'll see if I'm right on that.
Yeah. Well, I am going to watch it. And if somebody's watching and they haven't got their free month of the WWE Network, get it. Because I'm telling you, it is a great network to have. I'm not trying to push it. I don't get no percentage of nothing. I'm just saying, get your WWE Network. It's free right now for a month. So go ahead and get it. Watch WrestleMania this weekend. Most of us are all in the house anyway. We can't go nowhere, so we might as well. Even if you're a wrestling fan, you say, I don't like to watch that stuff today. Just sit down and watch it and see if you like it. See if you like it. Because
there's a plethora of older stuff in the library there too. To me, it's my best investment every month. For $10 a month, I get to watch, 40 years or more of professional wrestling.
It's a good deal.
Sports entertainment. There's a difference, but I find something great in anything. I just wish they quit cussing.
All right, you hear it now. Jack Lord has told WWE officials, if you're watching, which I'm pretty sure they're not, but if you're watching, quit the profanity. We can watch your product without profanity, and I think I don't think anybody's watching the TV program saying, "Well, I watched that this week because Stone Cold shot a bird." I don't think they watched it because he shot a bird. They watched it because it was the good versus evil. Vince McMahon, the evil person. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the good guy. It was just what you wanted to do to your boss. I don't think he never could have shot a bird or ever did any profanity. He still drew. The Tennessee stud Ron Fuller bullet feud drew for 4 years in Alabama, and they didn't have to cuss or do any of that stuff. It's about that two people together and wrestling together. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on. Next Tuesday, me and Jack will do a wrestling conversation. We're going to talk about everything. There's no telling what we're going to talk about because sometimes our conversations can get way up. But we're going to just talk like we do when we're on the phone. So there's no telling what it'll get into. We'll talk about years ago, what we can remember. But that will be all next week on the next episode. And if you're watching this, please, if you're watching this on the replay, please like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and just like and share it if you're watching it on Facebook. Thank you so much. And guys, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much.
All right.